In this video, I am building this doghouse. I have 3 pups and I built them a doghouse 2 years ago that is actually big enough for all 3 of them. But one of them, this one right here, will get inside the house first and not let the others in. Yes, I could just cut in another opening, but since he's territorial about his space, I decided to build a completely different design to keep everybody happy. This new doghouse has 2 rooms with a dividing wall in between. I've incorporated heating pads so the space is nice and warm during winter, and a roof that is on a hinge so that I can easily get inside to change out blankets and beds or just check in on the pups. Let me show you how I built it. Let me thank this video sponsor real quick, which is Insulated. I first grabbed my armor workbench and moved in a pile of 2x4s from my truck to start cutting into pieces. I made a full set of plans with a cutlass before beginning this project so that I could immediately take my bench to the miter saw, pull my boards off, and cut all of the pieces needed all at once. If you're interested in the set of plans and cut list for this doghouse or my previous doghouse, those are available over on my website. I made stacks of all my parts over on another workbench as I was cutting them. To keep them organized, I kept all similar parts stacked together. After freeing up my armor bench, I wheeled it over to collect them all and moved everything to my main workbench to start assembling. First thing I worked on building is the platform. I included this so that I could elevate the doghouse, which will keep the floor of the house dry even if the porch gets wet. After laying out my main 2x4s, I laid out the studs to connect the 2, then joined them together with screws. Next, I brought out my Triton track saw and cut down all of the sheet goods needed. I'm wearing a respirator made by Stealth Mask, which is the lowest breathing resistant of any half mask on the market. If you're interested in getting one, you can use the code April10 to get 10% off. This first piece will be the decking to the platform I just built. I always prop my sheet up with a scrap board to elevate it slightly, then I changed the depth of my track saw to just cut past the thickness of the sheet, but not into my workbench. Perfect. Now to put this onto here. And now to screw it down. I quickly went around the perimeter and attached it in several places. Now I can push that aside for a second and start building the walls. It's just my system that I always grab all of my pieces needed and lay them out on my workbench before getting started. I noticed the spacing on the studs will be too narrow to fit a drill in after I have things attached. So I wanted to get the diagonal member in first. To do this, I clamped a straight edge, just a level in my case, to a workbench so that I would have a straight reference for both studs to rest against. This way I could pop this piece in while having plenty of room on either side to screw it in. After repeating to make a second, then I joined these studs to the bottom plate. I applied wood glue and 2 screws per stud, first going along the bottom and then moving along the top. On the top, I have a few pieces that intersect with another stud. Since this is a doghouse and not a real house, I pulled out my armor pocket hole jig and used it to drill a few pocket holes into this side. This will give me an easy way to attach this member to the center stud while face screwing the rest. Well, that's one. I repeated the process and built a second, which will be the back wall. It is amazing how quickly the whole build goes. Before attaching them to the platform, I next built these smaller units that will connect the front to the back. These are 2 I shapes and 1 T-looking shape that consist of full 2x4s and then some ripped down 2x4s. The reason for these will make more sense in just a few minutes. As you can see, I gave the base a quick coat of paint first, but then I grabbed my front wall and lined it up in position. I threw a clamp on it quickly just to make sure it didn't fall on me. Then I screwed it down, making sure to get at least 1 screw per bay into the 2x4 member of the platform's 2x4. Next, I positioned and attached these center walls. Here I used a square to make sure I was attaching things squarely. Then finally, I placed and attached the back wall. Now for mine, I think having a 2x4 will give my dog enough sense of space to not make him fussy with the others. But if you wanted to, you could very easily skin both sides of this or one side to completely make it 100% blocked off from the other room. The next obvious step might seem like it should be building out the roof, but the roof will be hinged, so I saved that for last. For now, I moved on to adding the siding to the bottom portion I just built. For material on this, you can go with anything, but I chose beadboard as I think the texture dresses up quite a lot all on its own. I used my cutlass to pre-cut all of the panels needed and then started attaching. You can very well use screws here, but since I have a brad nailer, I applied wood glue, then popped in a few nails to hold it while it dried. I did this on both of the sides first, then repeated on the front and then on the back. Of course, I could have stopped there. It is just a doghouse after all. But why don't we cute it up a little bit? Bring in the trim. This is a simple step that, in my opinion, completely changes and enhances the project. I'm using 1x boards that are pre-painted white to save on time. Then adding it all around the perimeter of each side. White boards can easily be found in stock at big box stores, but if you want to go with a different color, I just recommend painting your boards before attaching them. On the door entrances, I used a wider piece and laid it flat, so the dogs would have a nice flat landing of sorts. Ah, that's so cute! Okay, with that done, let's build out the roof. The roof is simple enough. It's just some 2x4s to make up the framing and beadboard on top. I started by placing the 2x4s on the body of the house, then adding the cross members to the tails. These pieces aren't attached to the studs below because I want to hinge the roof and make it accessible from the top. So for right now, they're just rest in place. When I add the beadboard to each side, I use the body as a reference to get it flat against the back and to the rafter tails. Now to add the trim. These are simply added to the underside of the rafter tails and attached to the trim on the side. I always pre-drill a slight hole on hinges to make setting the screw easier. Now let's see if the dogs will go inside yet.
What do you think?
Makes sense that they have to get used to it. In the meantime, let's finish it up. With the roof hinge, now it was on to adding trim to it. I do love beadboard, but it's pretty thin. Too thin to add trim directly to the edge of. So on the roof, I cut down some scrap and glued a small strip under the front lip on all 3 front edges. This will give me more meat to attach the trim to instead of the nail just blowing it out. This trim does act as a handle for lifting up on the doors, so the added strength is needed. Once again, it is crazy how much of a difference trim makes. You're probably wondering, what about the big open seam? Don't worry, I gotcha. For me, my house will be under a porch and rain won't touch the top, but the solution for making the house watertight is to add a ridge cap. I made this up with 2 trim boards, again just cut wider than the other trim. Then the important part here is to only attach it to one side of the roof. This will mean that this side of the house will always have to be opened up first, but it will also mean water won't have a way to drip down onto my sleeping pups. Easy peasy. Again, you can very well stop there. However, I added one more feature to my house. I have a bump out on my porch that creates a nice nook once the doghouse is placed next to it. This gives the pups a nice open spot to lay so that they can see things but be blocked from the wind. To increase their comfort and add function to the house, I left my platform long and attached a slatted roof on the side, so that any pup laying here will also be given shade and be raised up off of the porch. It looks like this area has passed inspection. Now, there are several things you can add to enhance it further. For mine, I added insulation to the bottom bays of the platform and inside the walls. I also threw in a few heating mats. I didn't even know this was a thing, but what a wonderful idea. I drilled a hole in the back wall to run the power and now feel fine if I have to leave my pups on a cold day. Having a hinged top means I can have very easy access to the inside to switch out the bags, blankets, or pads. Oh, and of course a cute sign had to be made for it. Before letting you go, let me thank this video sponsor real quick, which is Ariat. I'm born and raised in Texas, so I always knew Ariat as a high quality boot maker, and while I do have their boots in my closet, they are so much more than that. Ariat has been putting in a lot of effort into their workwear line built for women that is designed by women. If you've been following along, you'll already know that means pants that not only have functioning deep front pockets, but also side pockets that can carry extra tools needed for whatever job you're currently doing. They also have traditional work boots that definitely take the title as the most comfortable pair of work boots I've ever worn right out of the box. They also have a full lineup of button-up shirts that have some fabulous design engineering so that the shirt can move with you as you work instead of making you feel all constricted and tight. If button-ups aren't for you, they also have a great casual line of long sleeves that are perfect for my Texas winters in the shop. Regardless of what you're after, give the Ariat a look, as they always think about the fit, the function, and the durability in every item that they have. Also, you can get 10% off any Ariat order if you use the link down in the description. Big thank you to Ariat for supporting my channel and what I do. I really hope that this video has made you feel confident or inspired you to build your own doghouse. Don't forget, if you want to simplify it, I do have a full cut list, material shopping list, and step-by-step plans for this doghouse as well as my previous one. I have links to those down in the description for you. I guess that's it. I will see you on my next project. If you have been wanting to make a rocking chair, then I have templates for this design right here. Or if you go to my website, I have templates for tons of other projects as well.